The history of samurai Japan is an epic saga spanning over 1,000 years, marked by honor, betrayal, martial arts, and a relentless struggle for power. This is the chronicle of the rise and dominance of a warrior class, the samurai, whose term means those who serve. From guardians to the ruling elite under the shogunate, the samurai shaped Japanese identity, embodying the code of conduct known as Bushidō, the warrior's path. Give like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin. The dawn of the samurai era, although often diffuse, is vaguely situated in the Heian period, from the year 794 to the year 1185. During this time, the imperial court in Kyoto, immersed in aesthetic and political intrigues, began to lose touch with the realities of the distant provinces. Centralized power weakened, and the administration of vast tracts of land was left in the hands of local aristocratic clans or officials who settled permanently. The court aristocracy, known as Kuge, valued poetry, calligraphy, and complex rituals, gradually losing interest in the pragmatic tasks of defense and regional governance. This power vacuum was crucial. To protect their lands, crops, and interests from bandits and rival clans, these landowners began to hire and eventually form their own contingents of mounted warriors and archers. These warriors, initially known as bushi, men of war, or samurai, the precursor term of samurai, were distinguished by their mobility and their mastery of mounted archery, kyuba no michi. Their weapons and armor were noticeably different from those of the imperial soldiers, favoring the armor oyoroi and the curved sword, the tachi. The need for professional warriors was not only due to bandits, but also to the growing disputes for control of the shoen, the tax-exempt estates that multiplied during the late Heian period. Two clans in particular emerged from this context: the Taira, also known as Heike, and the Minamoto, also known as Genji. Both were branches descended from the imperial family who had been sent to the provinces, a mechanism the court used to reduce the number of princes and their costs. However, his strength lay not in his court lineage, but in his growing military power and his ability to organize warriors. The rivalry between these two clans would dominate the Japanese political and military scene during the 12th century. At this early stage, samurai identity was intrinsically linked to their military role. The code of conduct, although incipient, focused on skill with the mounted bow and arrow, loyalty to the lord, daimyo, and the willingness to die honorably in battle. The samurai were, above all, a cavalry of archers, an elite force on the battlefields. The concept of honor and the shame of defeat were already central elements of their ethics, laying the foundations for the Bushidō posterior. The fight culminated in the Genpei Wars from the year 1180 to the year 1185, a conflict that represents a decisive turning point in Japanese history. The Genpei saga, immortalized in the epic Heike Monogatari, Tale of Heike, narrates the dramatic rise of the Minamoto and the annihilation of the Taira. The rivalry intensified due to a combination of intrigues at the Kyoto court and the fear of the civil nobility of the growing Taira power, which had managed to infiltrate the highest imperial offices under Taira no Kiyomori. A call to arms by an exiled imperial prince sparked the conflict. The Minamoto, led by the brilliant military strategist Yoshitsune Minamoto, brother of the clan leader, and his brother Minamoto no Yoritomo, rose up in the eastern provinces. The land and naval battles were brutal. The naval battle of Dan no Ura in the year 1185, when the Taira fleet was swept away by the Minamoto in the Shimonoseki Strait. It not only marked the end of a clan, many Taira nobles, including a child emperor Antoku, drowned, but also sealed the political fate of Japan. Minamoto no Yoritomo, the victorious leader of the Minamoto clan, was not content to assume a ceremonial role at the Kyoto court. In an act of profound political shrewdness, he established his own power base in Kamakura, far from the corrupting influence and aestheticism of the imperial court. This strategic decision marked the separation of military power, bakufu, from ceremonial power, chote. In the year 1192, Yoritomo received from the emperor the title of Sei Taishogun, great general subjugator of barbarians, thus formally establishing the first shogunate known as the Kamakura shogunate, from the year 1192 to the year 1333. This event signified the effective transfer of political power from the civil nobility of Kyoto to the new military aristocracy of the samurai. The emperor continued to exist, maintaining a ritual and symbolic role as a source of legitimacy, but real control of the country rested with the bakufu, or military tent government, in Kamakura. The Kamakura shogunate laid the foundations for samurai rule that would last 700 years. Yoritomo designed a direct and efficient military government system. The Bakufu established in Kamakura a triple system: the Mandokoro, Administrative Council, the Monchujo, Court of Justice, and the Samurai Dokoro, Samurai Control Board. To ensure his control, Yoritomo appointed his trusted vassals as Jito, land managers, and Shugo, military governors, in the provinces. The Jito were responsible for collecting taxes and maintaining order in the Shuen, while the Shugo had broader police and defense functions. This military administrative system allowed the Bakufu to exert unprecedented control over Japan. Although Yoritomo, after his death, was succeeded by a line of weaker shoguns, real power within the shogunate quickly passed into the hands of the Hojo clan, who served as regents, shikken, for the Minamoto puppet shoguns. This pattern of power behind the throne would become a recurring feature in Japanese political history. Despite these internal power struggles, the Kamakura shogunate demonstrated its worth and national unity by confronting the most significant external threat in Japanese history, the Mongol invasions. In the year 1274, First Invasion, and the year 1281, Second Invasion, the massive fleets of Kublai Khan's Mongol Empire attempted to invade Japan. The samurai, despite their technological and numerical disadvantage, the Mongols used gunpowder and group warfare tactics unknown in Japan, bravely faced the enemy. Traditional samurai combat, which valued individual duels, had to adapt quickly. On both occasions, however, the typhoons, which the Japanese called kamikaze, divine wind, destroyed most of the invading fleet. Although victorious, the defense exhausted the resources of the shogunate and generated resentment among the samurai, who expected rewards of land and plunder that the Bakufu could not provide it, since they had not taken land from an enemy. The discontent of the vassals fatally weakened Kamakura's authority. Tensions culminated in 1333, when Emperor Go-Daigo attempted to restore imperial power in what is known as the Kenmu Restoration. Although brief, this effort was crucial, as it precipitated the fall of the Kamakura shogunate. The Kenmu Restoration quickly failed due to a lack of samurai support and dissatisfaction with imperial favoritism. A former ally of the emperor, Ashikaga Takauji, turned against him and established his own shogunate, beginning the Ashikaga or Muromachi shogunate from the year 1336 to the year 1573, based in the Muromachi district of Kyoto. The Muromachi period was an era of contrasts. On the one hand, it witnessed an extraordinary cultural flourishing, strongly influenced by Zen Buddhism, which became the religion of the samurai class. Zen promoted discipline, meditation, and a minimalist aesthetic that was reflected in art such as no theater, a stylized and ritualistic form of theater, the tea ceremony, chanoyu, a social ritual that emphasized simplicity, wabi, and tranquility, sabi. The Zen gardens, kare-sansui, rock and sand gardens that invited meditation, and the painting sumi-e, monochromatic ink painting, also influenced by Zen. On the other hand, the inherent weakness of the Ashikaga shogunate, which never managed to exert as firm a control over the provinces as the Kamakura had, inevitably led to chaos. The Ashikaga maintained their capital in Kyoto, close to the imperial court, which in the long term compromised their independence. The Muromachi shogunate was undermined by a dynastic conflict that resulted in the country being divided into two rival imperial courts, north and south, for almost 60 years. Although the courts were reunified in 1392, the power of the shoguns continued to erode as provincial military governors, or shugo, transformed into virtually autonomous feudal lords, known as daimyo, literally great land names. The point of no return was the Onin War, from the year 1467 to the year 1477. A devastating conflict that began as a shogun succession dispute and set Kyoto ablaze, destroying much of the capital and scattering the samurai and cultural elite across the country. The Onin War resolved nothing, but it served as the catalyst that plunged Japan into a century of anarchy and constant warfare, a period ominously known as the Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States period, from the year 1467 to the year 1600. The Sengoku Jidai is the quintessential samurai story in terms of military action and political strategy. The central authority of the Ashikaga shogunate completely collapsed, leaving a power vacuum that was filled by hundreds of daimyo who fought tirelessly for hegemony. Each province or region became a battlefield, and loyalty was based on strength and immediate reward, rather than tradition or lineage. In this climate of constant warfare, the samurai, who now constituted a broader militarized caste that included foot warriors, ashigaru. In addition to the elite cavalry, they became the backbone of the army's daimyo. The code Bushidō, although not yet formalized in writing, was practiced through absolute loyalty to the Lord and the willingness to die with honor. However, loyalty was often fleeting, and the Gekkokujo, the inferior overthrowing the superior, was a constant. Innovations in the art of war were rapid. The daimyo built massive stone castles not only as defensive fortresses, but as centers of regional administration, jokamachi. The arrival of the Portuguese to Japan in the year 1543 introduced the arquebus, teppo. Astute daimyo like Oda Nobunaga were quick to adopt this new technology and reorganize their armies to harness its destructive power, integrating massive units of ashigaru armed with arquebuses. The process of reunifying Japan was carried out by a trio of extraordinary leaders, often remembered with a popular Japanese saying, "Nobunaga kneads the dough. Hideyoshi bakes it and Ieyasu eats it." Oda Nobunaga was the first to emerge as a dominant force. Based in Owari province, Nobunaga was a ruthless military genius and iconoclast who dared to challenge the power of the great Buddhist monasteries such as Enryaku-ji, which had become military strongholds. His decisive victory in Okahazama in the year 1560 against a much larger army, and the subsequent massive use of arquebuses in the Battle of Nagashino in the year 1575, where they formed lines of riflemen protected by palisades, broke the tradition of samurai warfare and established a new standard of military power. Nobunaga controlled half of Japan before being betrayed and forced to commit seppuku, ritual suicide, by one of his own generals. Akechi Mitsuhide at Honnoji Temple in the year 1582. Nobunaga's mantle was taken up by Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a man of humble origins born a commoner, who rose through the ranks of Nobunaga to become his chief general. Hideyoshi was the great unifier. In a decade, he consolidated control over all of Japan through a combination of shrewd diplomacy and overwhelming military force. Hideyoshi is famous for having institutionalized a strict social division. He carried out a sword register, katanagari, throughout the country, confiscating the weapons of the peasants to ensure that only the samurai class could carry weapons, consolidating their status as a ruling and professional caste. He also forbade samurai from engaging in agriculture, forcing them to reside in castle cities, jokamachi, of their daimyo, thus creating a clear distinction between the warrior and the peasant. Despite his unifying success, his excessive ambition led him to two costly and failed invasions of Korea in the year 1592 and the year 1597, a strategic error that strained the country's resources and left a legacy of resentment. His death in the year 1598, leaving a minor heir, paved the way for the final conflict. Give like, subscribe, and share. After Hideyoshi's death in 1598, the third and longest-lasting of the unifiers, Tokugawa Ieyasu, emerged. Ieyasu, a former ally and rival of Nobunaga and Hideyoshi, patiently awaited his moment. The final showdown for supremacy took place at the crucial Battle of Sekigahara in the year 1600. Ieyasu's victory over the coalition of clans loyal to Hideyoshi's son, the Western Army, gave him undisputed control over Japan. In the year 1603, Ieyasu was appointed shogun by the emperor, establishing the Tokugawa shogunate from 1603 to 1868 with its capital in Edo, present-day Tokyo. This period, also known as the Edo period, represented the zenith of samurai power and the beginning of an almost uninterrupted peace of more than 250 years, the Tokugawa Pax. The role of the samurai was radically transformed. The Tokugawa shogunate implemented a meticulously designed system of social and political control to ensure stability and prevent the resurgence of civil war. Society was rigidly stratified under the Confucian model. Samurai at the top, followed by peasants, artisans, and finally merchants. This hierarchy was legally immutable, although economic reality differed. The system sank in kotai, rotation attendance or shift attendance, was the key mechanism Ieyasu used to control the daimyo, now about 260. It demanded that each daimyo spend a year in Edo serving the shogun and the following year in their domains. Furthermore, their families were required to remain permanently in Edo as virtual hostages. This system not only drained the finances of the daimyo, limiting its ability to finance rebellions, but also stimulated the growth of Edo as a metropolis and the creation of a network of roads and inns. The shogunate also implemented the policy of national isolation known as sakoku, severely limiting contact with the outside world, with the notable exception of the Dutch in Dejima and limited contact with China and Korea. In order to eliminate the influence of Christianity and preserve internal order, for the samurai, the era of peace brought with it a fundamental change in roles. Although they remained the military caste, their role transformed from warriors into administrators, bureaucrats, and government officials. The Bushidō was codified during this era, evolving from an informal set of warrior practices into a moral and ethical philosophy that emphasized absolute loyalty to the lord and the shogun. Self-discipline, emotional control and frugality, and education. The samurai became the literate and administrative class studying Confucianism, history, and classical military arts. The samurai maintained their exclusive right to carry swords, the katana and the wakizashi, the dual symbol of his status and his soul. However, the irony was profound. The warrior had become an office worker, and his sword was more a symbol of rank than an active tool of war. Despite the political stability, the long peace had undesirable economic and social consequences for the samurai class. Deprived of war, many samurai became low-ranking bureaucrats with fixed salaries, often paid in rice. These wages did not keep pace with rising inflation and the monetary economy, which was dominated by the merchant class. Merchants at the bottom of the formal social hierarchy grew enormously in wealth and influence thanks to Sankin Kotai and urban life, while many samurai fell into poverty, accumulating debts with them. The gap between the ideal of Bushidō, honor, courage, frugality, and the reality of the indebted bureaucrat generated a deep frustration and social resentment. Many samurai became ronin, masterless samurai, or they dedicated themselves to academic or artistic life to justify their existence. The end of the samurai era did not come with an internal bang, but with the eruption of the outside world. In the year 1853, Commodore Matthew Perry of the United States Navy sailed with a fleet of black ships to Edo Bay, demanding that Japan open its ports to trade. This event dramatically exposed the military and technological weakness of the shogunate in the face of the Western powers. Foreign pressure created an unprecedented internal political crisis. The policy of sakoku collapsed, and the bakufu was forced to sign unequal treaties. This unleashed a wave of nationalism and anti-foreignism, especially in the Western domains traditionally hostile to the Tokugawa, notably Satsuma and Choshu. These clans united under the motto Sono Joy, reverence the emperor, expel the barbarians, turning the emperor, who had been a ceremonial figure for centuries, into a symbol of national unity and legitimacy. In the following decades, young samurai from these domains, often of low rank but with great ambition and reformist ideas, known as the elite shishi, rose up in arms against the Bakufu Tokugawa. This conflict culminated in the Boshin War, from 1868 to 1869. A civil war that saw the final defeat of the shogunate forces, despite the late modernization of its army. The last shogun, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, formally resigned in the year 1867. In the year 1868, the Meiji Restoration was established. This event, led by the reformist samurai elite such as Okubo Toshimichi, Kido Takayoshi, and Saigo Takamori, was not a restoration of imperial power in the medieval sense, but a political revolution that transferred power to a modern oligarchy. The new Meiji era, from 1868 to 1912, focused on rapid modernization and westernization, Fukoku Kyohei, rich country, strong army, to prevent colonization by foreign powers. The Meiji government considered the samurai system, with its hereditary stipends and caste structure, to be an anachronism and an obstacle to national unity and the creation of a modern army. Between the years 1871 and 1876, a series of decrees were implemented that formally abolished the samurai class. The feudal domains, Han, were abolished and replaced by centrally controlled prefectures. Hereditary stipends were replaced by government bonds, often insufficient to maintain the samurai standard of living. In the year 1876, samurai were forbidden from carrying swords in public, haitorai, the most symbolic blow to their identity. Abolition provoked resentment and rebellion, the most famous of which was the Satsuma Rebellion in the year 1877, led by Saigo Takamori. the last true samurai. Although the rebellion was brutally suppressed by the newly formed national army, composed mainly of conscripted commoners, it marked the definitive end of the warrior class as a military and political force. Despite their dissolution as a caste, the legacy of the samurai endured. Many ex-samurai Shizoku joined the ranks of the new government, the army, the police, and business circles, using their education, discipline, and administrative experience to lead the modernization of Japan. The spirit of the samurai, in particular the Bushidō, became an integral part of Japanese national identity and was promoted by the Meiji government as the moral basis for loyalty to the emperor and service to the nation. Intellectuals such as Nitobe Inazo formalized the Bushidō in a text, projecting it as the ethical essence of Japan to the Western world. From their beginnings as provincial guardians through the formation of the shogunate and the iron grip of the Edo period, and until their final dissolution, the samurai dominated the history of Japan, leaving a cultural and ethical legacy that resonates to this day, a testament to 1,000 years of battles, leadership, and an unbreakable code of honor. Its aesthetics, martial arts, and moral code remain one of the most powerful cultural forces in Japan today. To understand the essence of the samurai, it is essential to delve into the symbolism and function of the Japanese sword. The katana, who was nicknamed the soul of the samurai. The Japanese warrior's sword evolved with the warrior class. The initial sword was the tachi, Heian and Kamakura period, more curved and designed to be used by the cavalry. It was worn hanging from the belt with the blade facing down, facilitating quick drawing from horseback. The tachi was the main weapon during the Genpei Wars. As the war became more intensive and shifted from cavalry to foot combat, the katana, Muromachi and Edo periods became predominant. Shorter than the tachi and carried with the edge facing upwards in the obi, belt, allowed for a faster draw and cut in a single action, the technique iajutsu. The katana was the main weapon of war during the Sengoku Jidai. During the Edo period, the use of daisho, literally large and small, the pair of swords that only samurai were entitled to carry, the katana, the long sword, used for main combat, and the wakizashi, the short sword, used for combat in confined spaces to decapitate a defeated opponent and, crucially, to perform the seppuku. The daisho was not just a set of weapons, but an unmistakable marker of the samurai class, a symbol of their privilege and responsibility. The quality of the blade, forged through a meticulous process of bending the steel to create an incredibly hard edge on a flexible core, was a work of art and a feat of metallurgical engineering. No analysis of the samurai sword is complete without mentioning the seppuku, harakiri, ritual suicide. The wakizashi was used for this purpose. The seppuku was considered the most honorable way to die. It allowed a samurai to avoid being captured by the enemy, which was the greatest dishonor, and was used to restore honor after a defeat, a serious mistake, or as punishment imposed by a superior, showing that the warrior valued honor above life. This final act, though brutal, encapsulated the samurai's commitment to the Bushidō and his willingness to be the master of his own destiny and death. The relationship between the samurai and Zen Buddhism was one of the most important cultural developments in medieval Japan. Zen, particularly the Rinzai school, was adopted by the samurai class from the Kamakura period onwards. His teachings resonated deeply with the warrior's life. Zen emphasizes living in the moment, the here and now. For the samurai who lived with imminent death, this was essential. The practice of meditation, zazen, helped to achieve the mental state of mushin, mind without mind, a state of detachment that allowed the warrior to act without hesitation or fear in battle. Zen aesthetics and practice, with their emphasis on rigorous discipline, simplicity, and rejection of courtly ostentation, aligned perfectly with the Spartan ethics that the samurai sought to promote. Furthermore, the idea that enlightenment could be achieved in an instant, often through a koan or a sudden action, translated well into the need for instant decision and lethal action in combat. Zen not only influenced the sword arts, kendo, but also in architecture, gardening, and the tea ceremony, helping to create the refined and austere culture of the Muromachi period that the samurai adopted as their own. Despite the official abolition, the influence of the samurai remained in the army, bureaucracy, and educational philosophy of the Meiji era and beyond. The Meiji government used the Bushidō as a unifying tool. Stripped of its feudal connotations, it was reformulated as a national ethical code that demanded loyalty to the emperor. The divine figure of the emperor replaced the daimyo as the supreme object of loyalty. And patriotism and sacrifice, samurai valor and the willingness to die honorably became the basis of military sacrifice for the Japanese nation. This spirit was central to Japanese imperialism and the wars of the 20th century. Today, the figure of the samurai remains a global archetype of discipline, honor, and martial mastery, a testament to the deep and lasting imprint that this warrior class left on the history and culture of Japan. Give, like, subscribe, and share. See you next time.